Action Comics 1073, Mark Waid writing with Clayton Henry on the art. So, yeah, we've got more of this Phantom Zone stuff. We have kind of like an updated kind of, I say update. Superman kind of reiterates the backstory of the Phantom Zone and Jor-El making it. But an emphasis kind of on the idea that he's questioning if his father was cold enough to just disregard concerns of how inhumane like sending people to the Phantom Zone actually was. He kind of points out that while Kryptonians were good people by and large, they did kind of value science and logic to a point of maybe ignoring the humanity of certain things.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear him kind of like critique like the culture of Krypton a little bit and how it's different from Earth.
Because there's a lot of stuff that gets made about Superman Kryptonian or Superman of Earth and what, kind of what versions we have here. And it seems like Mark Waid's definitely leaning more into the, he respects Krypton, but he understands what the flaws were and why it's not there anymore. It's not like this halcyon view of Krypton in and of itself. Because when he says, here that they, that science became their religion and that kind of overrode their sense of empathy, I think that puts it perfectly in the Krypton that we've seen throughout the Superman stories. So
yeah, you think a society based more on science and technology would adhere the warnings of the planet's going to die. Like you think they'd like? I get why Earth wouldn't listen to that because I'm seeing it every day with my own eyes. The Earth won't listen to that, but Krypton you expect would.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, but instead of putting it on some creator or trying to disregard, I felt like Krypton's like, oh, we'll figure it out, right? Well, science will lead us to the way.
Arrogance is what you're saying.
Yes, is the arrogance that's there, and Jor-El. That's the thing about Jor-El sending his only son away from it all, So it all fits in, but yeah, and just the way
more arrogance instead of ignorance.
Yes, and then here with Superman talking about like him not wanting to use the Phantom Zone unless it absolutely called for it. I thought that was a nice touch too, where he's like, I tried to use the Phantom Zone projector very sparingly because of this. And kind of just sets the stage for where this is going to go.
Yeah, I was a little bit more reiteration about Mon-El and the fact that he's only alive because everything in here's in stasis. No one in here needs to sleep. Or maybe even eat. It didn't say that, but I'm going to extrapolate that from everything else he says.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of vegetation.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of food going around. But it means that because no one's sleeping, they've kind of got all of the time in the world to like let problems fester and like connive and get on each other's nerves. Like, so there's a psychological impact from not having to sleep beyond the physical need for the rest, which is. You'd almost do an entire Phantom Zone story just about that, to be honest, if you really wanted to.
Well, that's a horror story, right? The you're up, but you don't know for how long, right? Because days are now meaningless. So you could have been, up and moving around. It's been 100 years or whatever. Like that's the type of stuff that really, really gets on me.
Oh yeah,
the lacking perception of reality and whatnot.
So they're flying through the air. Superman's talking about how his bracelet's like less than half of its charge left, so. Even though he feels bad for putting everyone in danger, he can't really, expense the flying powers that it would take on the bracelet. He would be kind of left without power. Another ship shows up, a new version of the same ship, basically, that the Aether has given to the Zadur, right? That's his name?
Zadu, yeah.
Zadu.
And it looks bioorganic, kind of, right? There's like eyes on it.
Yes. It's not even just two eyes either. There's like, I don't know. 7, 8 eyes sticking out the side of that thing.
It looks very creepy.
Yeah. So Superman goes to deal with it. Gets hit with some cannons. Zadu kind of he knows about the bracelet. He's trying to deplete the bracelet because every time Superman takes a hit and doesn't get hurt, it's depleting some of his solar energy. Superman realizes he has to finish it quickly, so we get this nice big sort of just 3-panel page where he flies towards us in the top panel and then flies through the ship in the middle panel, and then it's just black in the bottom. We've seen this type of thing before with Superman and other characters of this type of strength, where they just fly through a spaceship or something like that, and the whole thing explodes.
Yeah, and this feels like a not quite a self-sacrifice, but Superman knowing that this was his Hail Mary, that he might have to deplete his energy here.
Yeah.
because this one big move. So fingers crossed that it worked.
Yeah, and then we go to the subplot of the book, which is Keenan and Connor, who it turns out they're in a museum with all the artifacts from the Fortress of Wen,
including themselves. Just the idea that these two are a museum exhibit,
and they try and like raise their concerns with the alien or robot dude that's kind of like walking around, and he doesn't really want to hear it. Connor goes a bit hot-headed, tries to like complain, and Kane steps in and tries to speak more diplomatically, shall we say. But I did like the little bit here where he's trying to explain that all these things belong to Superman, and it says who he is. He says, "I am Superman" with the hyphen. He's like, "So they're yours?" He's like, "No, not really." And Connor jumps in and says, "You can't pronounce the hyphen. I keep telling you this." Which is true. The name only works on the page because we can read it that way and see it.
Right.
So, yeah. That's a fun little bit in the universe.
Very, very fun. This is an odd couple pairing that I would like a backup for. Just the adventures of these two, or misadventures, rather.
I mean, this basically is a backup, but just in the middle of the book.
Yeah. But, keep something like this going from WAID. I think it would be fun. But, yeah, they have all these things from different cultures, and, there's all this stuff from Thanagar. Right, and we know from Green Lantern now that Thanagar has been destroyed by Mogo.
That feels a nice bit of synchronicity, that.
By Varen, or not Varen, was it Theron? Theros,
yes.
All of them. Anyways, it's been destroyed, so it looks like this is a collection of civilizations that no longer exist. Right, so they've come in. Still, we don't know how exactly they breached the fortress and took all this Kryptonian stuff.
Yeah,
it is on display now.
I like the detail about how they're saying, "Oh, Krypton's a lost civilization. This has to all be preserved and put on show." To which one of them says, "Oh, but there's survivors. There's a few of them." And he's like, "It's a rounding error." And I'm like, I mean, he's not wrong. No. 2 people is kind of a rounding error in the grand scheme of an entire civilization.
Well, yeah, but that also goes into the beginning of the book where the lack of empathy, right? That they're just looking at this, a civilization is made up of, a culture and of a people, right? And if you're just looking at it from the macro, from the outside, you forget that civilization were those people. And that's what, a lot like Superman's talking about the Kryptonians and their lack of empathy and their drive for science. This seems to go hand in hand with that.
So yeah, back to Superman. He pulls out his little button to take him back to Earth because he's out of power. He realizes he has to leave, retreat, come back with some more force, come back with some allies perhaps. But Zadu blasts it out of his hands, so they don't really address it again afterwards, so I'm not sure if he was able to grab it again or if he's just stuck here for the time being. But the big thing here is that Mon-El jumps in and punches Zadu with Superman's second bracelet. He actually gave one to Mon-El so that he'd have a bit of power for a touch.
Yeah, he split his energy here.
So Superman takes that bracelet back, which now has about half of its charge left. So one bracelet's completely depleted, and the second one has got about half left, maybe a bit less. And this is where Aether shows up and is huge and basically banishes Zadu for failing to get Superman, even though he's like, "Hey, he's right here." It's like, yes, but of his own volition, you've not captured him, so you're getting banished down the time hole at the center of the Phantom Zone. So it's like, okay, that's a thing you're introducing.
Throws him into a wormhole.
Yeah, it's like, okay, all right, fair enough. So he's begging no, because it'll just be this, it's, what do you call it, the eye of the zone, a bottomless pit of history. Where time and space are intertwined and infinite madness. So it's just kind of banishing him to almost like a worse version of the Phantom Zone, where you're just confused and disorientated the whole time. But that ultimately is what also happens to Superman. Superman tries to stand up to Aether. Aether just grabs him and throws him into the same eye of the zone.
He just says yeet.
So the big cliffhanger at the end of this, as he's falling through this weird wormhole or the eye of the zone, whatever you want to call it, is that he's able to it's not quite a wormhole because there is a physical exterior to this, and he's able to grab onto one of the cracks, and through each of the cracks there's different memories, right? He's seeing different things in time. Supergirl using the Phantom Zone projector, something that looks like Superboy, as in him as Superboy. He's able to grab onto one crack and fight his way through. He's hoping that it'll take him back to Earth. He comes through this crack in the space-time continuum. He's in a field. It looks like Earth, and he's like, wait, why don't I feel like the sun's recharging me? Why do I feel like gravity's really strong? And then he looks up, and the final page is that he's not on Earth. He's came through a crack in time, not Darkseid's crack, but a different crack in time. He's on Krypton before the destruction of Krypton. It's a good final page. Given that, so here's the thing. There is far too many stories in Superman where he somehow ends up on Krypton before it was destroyed. Writers do it too often. That is a blanket thing I will say, and I don't think this is exempt from that. But what I will say is good about this is that because Mark Waid already set up the idea that Superman is questioning the ethics of Kryptonian society, at the very least he's already established what this is probably going to explore and how Superman's going to learn and interact about, you know, like how Krypton functions. Maybe, I mean, it says next time the secret of Jor-El, so presumably he's going to see. So will he talk to Jor-El? Will he just sort of witness it from afar? I don't know. It depends how stealthy he wants to be.
And are we doing timey-wimey rules here, right? Where can he even talk to Jor-El? Can he be truthful?
Oh, is he a ghost just sort of walking around Krypton effectively? Yeah.
Right. Can he do this? Is he really there? I mean, it seems like he's really there from coming through that.
But based on him saying the sun's affected him, I would say he's physically there. But
like, can he even, you know, will he be able to interact with them? You know, or will he want to?
I could see him deciding that he can't because it would mess up space-time. So
space, right?
So he'll keep his distance or put on a disguise and pretend. You know, at the very least, I would think he might change his outfit and like just pretend to be whoever. So that if he does talk to Jor-El, Jor-El won't know it's his son from the future.
Right. Well, because he is wearing the crest of the House of El as well. So like he's
obviously that's why I'm saying change his clothes, like put on a disguise. But obviously his dad's not going to recognize this grown man as his son, right? He's not going to know who he is. So yeah, I don't know. I think that this is a fun cliffhanger in the context of the story, and I think it's interesting that we're going to get to see him explore the questions that he raised at the start of the issue, which is this idea of like, were they kind of bastards for doing this in the first place? And now Superman's going to get to actually maybe ask some of those questions and understand it better. Yeah. I think that part of it makes this like a logical place for this to go. But with the acknowledgement that too many stories in Superman's history have done he's somehow on Krypton before he exploded just so he can see it. Even though the whole point of his character is that he was, you know, sent away as a baby and never saw any of it. At least, well, not in any way that he could remember, at least. So
right. Well, that's always what I liked about later writers with Kara versus Clark, is that Clark doesn't remember Krypton. Kara very much does. You know, so it's a different vibe when Clark is trying to honor Krypton versus Kara, who's like, no, I this is what it was like.
Supergirl is actually, her experience in a weird way is, I mean, I guess you could say it's 50-50 and like in the middle, but I would say it's much closer to Batman's experience, and that, you know, Batman remembers his parents. He had time with them. He knows what he's missing. Kara's the same, but with the entire planet. Right. So, you know, seeing Clark interact here through Mark Waid's lens too, and knowing how Waid is, I feel like this is going to be, you know, like you said, Clark questioning them and maybe not trying to change things, but almost getting a different perspective. Yeah. Like, it's not exactly what he thinks. Like, maybe Jor-El does know and he tries to tell them not to, but they won't listen to him, just like they don't listen to him. That's possible. Yeah. You know? But then it would be interesting to see why everyone in the Phantom Zone still thinks Jor-El is their jailer. Like, he's the one responsible. You know, maybe they threw him under the bus as the public figure of it, but he didn't want to be or something. I don't know. It's interesting. I think that the important thing here, though, is that it feels like there's a story purpose for doing the Krypton part of this story, as opposed to, wouldn't it be amazing if we see Superman go back to Krypton? No, it's not, because we've seen it like 100 times at this point, and it's kind of lost its impact every single time. So, but yeah, so very, very positive overall on what it's doing with the story, though. So I have no complaints on that side of things.
And also, I just like seeing Ether throw Clark down through there. It was just kind of funny, just to see this big monster throw Superman into a wormhole tunnel. But, you know, it kind of shows the scale of things and like what's going to go on with Mon-El as well. Because I was thinking if he has the lead poisoning, that's what sent him to the Phantom Zone. And if he put on that band, would that energy band that gave Clark his powers, is that going to kickstart his metabolism? So now's Mon-El having the effects of the lead poisoning? You know?
Oh, I don't know. I would guess no, because I don't think it has anything to do with the, like, it's giving him solar power, but it's not changing the fact that the Phantom Zone makes it so you don't need to sleep or eat or anything like that. Like, all that stuff still, because is Superman eating while he's here? I don't think so.
Right.
Oh.
So, because it was, I think that's, you know, not what's the word? I feel like Wade putting emphasis on that, like the metabolism's frozen, right? I feel like that's going to come around in some way. But yeah, no, that was a fun reveal too, with Mon-El having the other wristman to come in and help.
You know, I like the idea of a story where a villain imprisons Superman somehow, because the idea is that while he'll last longer, eventually he will just starve to death, and some evil villain tries to do that. So Superman's in a cage for like maybe a year even, like, and he's almost dying before he gets saved or is able to fight his way out. But I want a story about Superman being starved to death.
Pete's not out of October viewing yet.
No,
his brain's still there.
It's such a normal thing that he presumably still needs to eat for sustenance, because the sun gives him energy. I don't think it gives him regular.
Different writers have done that. That technically he doesn't eat. It's more of a social thing when he goes to eat, because the solar power gives him that energy that he needs. Like that, why we eat.
I mean, that's fair.
You know, but you can still deprive him of solar energy, and it's the same thing. You know, past a certain point, he's going to have to.
The reason why that doesn't hold up for me as an explanation, though, is because there's so many stories where he's either on Krypton or he's in space, and all that happens when he's not away from the sun, or he's away from the sun, is that he just loses his powers. He just becomes a normal human, which would imply that he still, presumably at least when he's away from the sun, he still has to eat to just keep himself going like everyone else does.
True.
So that's my logic, and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, the backup, it's an interesting chapter in the Supergirl story, because it's actually presented from the perspective of this prisoner that she's coming to find, and very mysterious, very ominous. We don't really get a good look at, like, I mean, if they have a face under there. It has
like a mirror mask kind of vibe to it, right?
Yeah, it's a very kind of alien style sort of helmet and like visor, and we don't really see, like, I'm assuming that is a mask and not like this is some alien race, that this is just what they look like. But basically, you know, there's a lot of he's basically talking about, I say he, maybe a she, talking about how memories are looping, and like it's kind of like almost gobbledygook as someone who's like trapped in their mind or something like that, and or someone who can see all of time and is like burdened with all the knowledge of it. There's a page here where it's like you can kind of see like what they're seeing inside their helmet, and it's like all these different images from not just like one place. Like there's clearly places on Earth. In fact, there's one panel there that I think's maybe a reference to Being Super, which I thought was a cool little touch. But there's those panels of aliens like having their newborns, and you know, horses, butterflies, and all that. But yeah, but this being can sense that Kara's coming. And it talks a lot about silence, talks a lot about what's coming, says, is that why they sent her? Because she can understand and maybe sympathize with some of what he's going through. But, you know, it's all the narrations from his perspective, and the book just ends with Supergirl arriving on this, what turns out to be a tiny, tiny little moon or planet. And you can tell that because when she lands the ship on it, the ship is like basically teetering on like one side of the sphere. Like, you know, it's the idea that the planet is so small that if you parked a car on it, the car would be sitting on its middle, and the tips of the car would be like dangling off the sides. It's tiny, so but she uses the key thing she got from the robot last time, and inside is this prisoner, and she's like, says who she is, and she's there to, you know, take him away to make him pay for the crimes that he's committed. But interestingly, again, very horror movie vibes, is that when she opens the door, I don't know if she sees this, but we see in the reflection or the playback of this visor a panel of her screaming, presumably from the future.
Yes.
Which is very ominous. I really like, obviously, I can't really say much about what this character is yet. It honestly is just a bunch of like David Lynch style, like, you know, gobbledygook.
Which means it's right up your alley.
Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, that can be bad if it's not handled well, but I will say I like the vibe of this, and it just felt like a nice little, like, because we've been talking about this prisoner for 3 backups already, so giving them this issue to have this kind of mysterious introduction is very interesting. The end of it seems to be that as she's, like, meeting him for the first time, a ship, I think, arrives overhead. I think that's what that is anyway.
It looks like the ship that she just escaped that had all the spiders on it, that was looking, so it's almost like it followed her there.
Yeah, that would make some sense. The only other thing to mention is the robot that came with her is conflicted because they have no purpose, no mission. And it just says at the end, "I will wait until one presents itself to me." And I'm like, that's a bit ominous. Depending on what you think's a worldly cause, like your mission might end up being something bad. But
because the robot's like, the judge has been exterminated, and its entire job is to assist the judge, right? And it's like, but your mission's the same, so I'm not supposed to be, doing this with you, right? The whole poison of the whole reason that the judge had this was almost to keep this thing, whatever it is, locked away here. So, yeah, very, very. And I do love that page where it's after she lands on that planetoid, and you get Kara in the space of that planet, right? In the bright yellow. And it's different things of her experiencing, like those vines coming out. I think that's a really cool page.
Well, yeah, I mean, the main thing that works about it for me is the idea that, like, each of these circles that the panels are in, they're all circular. That they're all at, like, one's upside down, one's coming from the left, one's coming from kind of the right way up. And it's the idea that because this planetoid's so small, as she's walking around it, she's literally, like, a few steps and she's like pointing it out to a different direction of space because it's that small a planet. That's kind of the vibe that it's going for, is that she's walking on a very small sphere, and therefore is like, I don't know, it is a cool sort of idea and visual that you get from it.
It's very disorienting too, right? Yeah. Because it doesn't follow exactly like she is standing there. But yeah.
Yeah, I still really like the art for this backup. The hair blown in the wind. I really like. I didn't mention the art in the main story too much. It's just still very Clayton Henry. Arguably more Clayton Henry than the last few issues were. But yeah, enjoying the story though in the main.
Yeah, bit, I was hoping the Ether was gonna have a giant forehead, like a movie screen.
But no, really digging the vibe of the backup and the art and all that. So very, very intrigued to see. I'm very interested in seeing who this prisoner is, what they did, and are they actually guilty of something, or is this all kind of a facade on top of what the real thing is that's going on? Is it really just a prisoner transfer, or is it something a bit more meaningful than that? I'm curious, very curious.
That mask that kind of shows the future and stuff in a loop, it almost feels like that in and of itself is the prison. So to see, like, if Kara's meant to free this person, who is this person, and why are they being punished in this way? I think that's my big takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Dr. Manhattan-y. Like, I can see time from before and after, and everything's happening at once kind of thing. It's definitely in that kind of vein. So very, very curious to see where it goes. Not that I think it's Dr. Manhattan, for the record.
No, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Where it has that kind of almost detached kind of vibe, like Dr. Manhattan does.
Yeah. All right, what are you giving Action Comics?
I'm going to give this a solid 8.
Yep, I agree. 8 out of 10. I like the questions that it's poking of, and Clark thinking about Krypton, and I'm really enjoying the backup as well. So, good stuff.